Is ulcerative colitis a disability? My name's Jacob, and I've been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis for over 10 years. And over this past decade, there's been many times when my inflammatory bowel disease has felt like a disability. So let's start by asking, what is a disability? So I'm going to answer this by looking at what the government here in the UK defines as a disability. The definition of a disability under the Equality Act of 2010. You're disabled under the Equality Act if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative impact on your ability to do normal day-to-day activities. So we're going to define what substantial and long-term actually mean. Substantial is more than minor or trivial. So they've got an example here. It takes much longer than it usually would to complete a daily task like getting dressed. Long-term is defined as 12 months or more. For example, a breathing condition that develops as a result of a lung infection. And then we have progressive conditions. A progressive condition is one that gets worse over time. People with progressive conditions can be classed as disabled. However, you automatically meet the disability definition under the Equality Act of 2010 from the day you're diagnosed with HIV, cancer, or multiple sclerosis. So there's no mention of inflammatory bowel disease, but it does seem that it almost meets some of the criteria. In some ways, ulcerative colitis can be a progressive condition. It can get worse as time goes on. And sometimes it can be substantial. Sometimes when you're in a deep flare, it can take longer to get dressed, like in the example given. And it especially meets the criteria of long term. Here it says meaning more than 12 months. Well, we're all told that inflammatory bowel disease is a lifelong condition. So it would seem it could maybe be a disability. So let's take a deeper look into how ulcerative colitis affects day-to-day life. And I'm going to be doing that by looking at my own life. Ulcerative colitis has impacted me in many ways over the years, and it has certainly impacted my ability to work over that time. In times of flare, I would be almost attached to the toilet, and I wouldn't feel safe to go outside. Bowel movements were filled with physical trauma, gut-wrenching pain, bleeding, and fatigue. And also, I do believe it gave me some mental trauma. I was very anxious to leave my house for any means, and I was terrified of the trajectory that my life was going in. So this, of course, affected my ability to work. I was able to go to work during these times of flare, but I was needing to go to the bathroom very frequently while I was at work. One particular time that stands out to me was during one of my first commissions as a videographer. I was filming on set, conducting interviews, and in between each interview that lasted about 10 to 20 minutes, I would run as quickly as I could after the interview finished, get on the toilet, and I would have a bit of a bleed. And then I would go straight back to the interview and carry on. At the time, I kept my symptoms on the down low and no one questioned anything, because at the time I was undiagnosed and I had no idea what was going on. Other times that I've had problems with flaring and working is when I was working at a school as a cleaner, and I would have to lie on the floor in pain every time cramps came on. I was very lucky that at this workplace, my boss was very understanding and allowed me to lie down quietly in the staff room until the pain went away. But this was a reasonable adjustment that I needed to get through the working day. Just before the biggest flare of my life that put me in hospital, I was working as a self-employed video editor and videographer, and I was editing videos from home. This allowed me the freedom to do some work at the computer and then run to the bathroom as I saw fit. While this was quite a terrible situation to be going on, I was thankful for the fact that I was able to work from home, because I was able to give myself the time that I needed in between work to run to the bathroom and then have some time to recover from the mental and physical trauma that I'd been through on the toilet before I returned back to doing video editing. But this was all put to a halt the second that I had to go into hospital. No longer was I able to work, although I did have my laptop on me, and I told myself that I was going to continue video editing from the hospital bed. But that didn't really happen. I was just lying in the hospital bed and I had no motivation to do anything. So the question remains, do these situations count as a disability for me? The times that I was flaring when I was employed, I was given the space to lie down and recover from the pain. Being given this space to lie down and recover from the pain and have free reign of bathroom trips made working manageable for me. In this instance, I would not class it as a disability because I was still able to get work done. Yes, it was very tough and an extra layer of challenge that other people didn't have to face in the workplace, but I was still able to work. This is what we call reasonable adjustments. Adjustments that can be made to your workplace to allow you to continue to do your job. However, my perspective would then shift if I was working for an employer that didn't allow me these reasonable adjustments. If my employer said that I just had to grin and bear it through the pain and didn't allow me the space that I needed to rest and recover from my symptoms, I truly believe that that would put me in a worse state and it would make me feel as though I did have a disability. When I was working as a self-employed video editor from home, it was much the same situation. I was allowed to give myself those reasonable adjustments so I could continue working. I also kept open communication with the rest of my team and they understood completely what I was going through, so I was able to go away and lie down for as much time as I needed in between work and no one was yelling at me over the phone saying, "Where's this video edit?" However, as soon as I was put into hospital, I would now agree that this was 100% in the realms of disability. During my time in hospital, I was unable to walk properly. The pain in my gut was meaning I was shuffling around and things would take me an unreasonable amount of time to do that otherwise I would do very quickly. And just going back to the definition of what a substantial negative effect on your ability to do normal day-to-day activities is, it says substantial is more than minor or trivial. And the example is it takes much longer than it usually would to get the daily task done, like getting dressed. And I certainly was in that state when I was in hospital. It would take me a long time to do anything just because the pain was so great and I was in such a fragile state. So with all this being said, in these situations, could I have reached out and got monetary help? In the past, I've looked into applying for personal independence payments. This is a scheme in the UK where the government can offer you monetary aid in respite for your disability. However, at the time, I was told that I was not disabled enough. So looking at the eligibility for personal independence payments, you have to be 16 or over. You have to have a long-term physical or mental health condition or disability, which immediately I meet that criteria, having ulcerative colitis, as it's a lifelong condition. You also have to have difficulty doing certain everyday tasks or getting around, and you expect the difficulties to last for at least 12 months from when they started. So ulcerative colitis definitely does meet two of the criteria, having a long-term physical condition or disability and expecting the difficulties to last for at least 12 months as it's a lifelong condition. However, I feel that the fact that ulcerative colitis ebbs and flows and you go into flares and out of flares means that you may drift in and out of eligibility for this kind of help. When you are in a flare state with ulcerative colitis, I do believe you are most likely eligible to get this sort of monetary help, but it does depend on the severity of the flare. At the time when I applied for this sort of monetary help, I was in a mild flare. My symptoms weren't really impacting my day-to-day life, and it was more a mental impact, and I felt like that I was hopeless. However, the government didn't really seem to see my mental anguish as a disability, as I was still able to manage my symptoms myself by giving myself those reasonable adjustments in the workplace. So they said, no, you may not have this monetary help. So it seems unless you're battling with an extensive flare that might be putting you in hospital, you won't be getting any monetary support from the government. So that pretty much leaves us with just one option: learning to deal with this ourselves. This is one of the main reasons why I think it's of utmost importance that we prioritise our health while we can. So we are still left with the question, is ulcerative colitis a disability? Well, the short answer is that it depends. If you are in a severe flare that is deeply impacting your ability to move and do day-to-day activities, then yes, ulcerative colitis is a disability. If you're in a mild to moderate flare and able to treat your symptoms with medication at home, and still able to get work done with self-management and reasonable adjustments in the workplace, then it would seem that ulcerative colitis is not currently a disability, which may not be the answer that you're looking for, because I totally understand the mental anguish that ulcerative colitis can put on us. Even when facing a mild ulcerative colitis flare, it can feel like a disability and a huge hindrance on your life. but in the eyes of the government, it's not disabling enough. So that just leaves us with working on ourselves and making ourselves as strong and resilient as possible so we can look after ourselves and our future. And doing this alone can seem like a daunting task. So join my Discord down in the description below. And if you'd like to hear my life story with ulcerative colitis, then click this video here. And I go into all the details of my whole story with this chronic disease.